Voluntaryist Academy is an educational platform dedicated to the principles of non-aggression, self-ownership, and the ethical philosophy of voluntarism. Here, we reject the mythology of political authority and embrace the timeless truth that all human interaction should be grounded in consent and moral integrity. Through rigorous study, in-depth courses, and accessible materials, Voluntaryist Academy equips individuals with the tools to critically examine the foundations of coercive systems and to replace them with voluntary, peaceful alternatives rooted in natural law. So whether you are new to these ideas or looking to deepen your understanding, Voluntaryist Academy provides a structured path to intellectual freedom, ethical consistency, and personal sovereignty. Welcome. Explore the curriculum, challenge false assumptions, learn to live free. We are streaming live every Saturday night. Tonight we're going to be continuing the series that I'm doing on An Agorist Primer by Samuel Edward Konkin III. Chapter 3, Counter-Economics. We see that nearly every action is regulated, taxed, prohibited, or subsidized. Much of this statism, for it is only the state that wields such power, is so contradictory that little ever gets done. If you cannot obey the state's laws and charge less than, more than, or the same as your competitor, what do? You go out of business or you break the law. Suppose paying your taxes would drive you out of business. You go out of business or you break the law. Government laws have no intrinsic relationship with right or wrong or good and evil. Historically, most people knew that the royal edicts were for the king's good, not theirs. People went along with the king because people went along with the king because the alternative looked worse. This line of thinking leads to Chapter 5. So we'll just note here that even today, society recognizes the conscientious objector, the religious dissenter to laws that his deity forbids him to obey, the man or woman who follows the law of God or nature against the monopoly of force in society. Since they would rather die than submit, a society which restrains its government from heavy repression will exempt many objectors. But everyone is a resistor to the extent that he survives in a society where laws control everything and give contradictory orders. All non-coercive human action committed in defiance of the state constitutes the counter-economy. For ease of later analysis, we exclude murder and theft, which are done with the disapproval of the state. Since taxation and war encompass nearly all cases of theft and murder, the few independent acts really should be classified as other forms of statism. Since anything the state does not license or approve of is forbidden or prohibited, there are no third possibilities. A counter-economist is 1, anyone practicing a counter-economic act, or 2, one who studies such acts. Counter-economics is the one practice, 2, study of counter-economic acts. The size of the counter-economy. The counter-economy is vast. Our brief study of economics tells us that this should be no surprise. The more controls and taxation a state imposes on its people, the more they will evade and defy them. Since the United States is one of the less officially controlled countries, and the counter-economy here is fairly large, the global counter-economy should be expected to be even larger, and it is. U.S. government estimates of the size of just the tax dodging part of the countereconomy is 20 to 40 million of the population. The Western European countereconomy is larger. In Italy, much of the civil service sits in government offices during the early part of the day and then moonlights at private jobs and business in the afternoon and evening. Communism collapsed in no small part due to the countereconomy. Nearly everything was available in the countereconomy, with only shoddy goods and shortages in the official socialist economy. The Soviets called counter-economic goods, quote-unquote, left hand, or navalo, and entire manufacturing assembly lines coexisted nalivo with the desultory state industry ones on the same factory floor. Counter-economic, quote-unquote, capitalists sold shares in their companies and vacationed in Black Sea resorts. Managers of collective farms who needed a tractor replaced in a hurry looked to counter-economy rather than see their Koltskov collapse awaiting a state tractor delivery. Currently, the Russian government seeks to reestablish state control of the economy by granting monopolies to cronies and imprisoning recalcitrant corporate executives. As with communism, this flirtation with fascism is just as doomed to failure. Nothing works in quote-unquote right-hand communism. Everything works in the left-hand free market. From quote-unquote black market apartments in the Netherlands to black housing in Argentina, the countereconomy is well known to the people of the world as the place to get things otherwise unattainable, or keep things one has earned. Inflation breeds flight from fiat money. Exchange controls have created dual exchange rates in nearly every country on the globe. Whatever the number of local currency units a tourist can get for his dollars at the official exchange rate, he or she can get more on the black market. Smuggling is so commonplace that nearly all tourists slip purchases past customs agents without thinking. Perhaps 20% to 30% of Americans fail to report taxable income. Actually, nearly 100% fail to report at least some. But in Latin American countries, close to 80% goes uncollected, and the state supports itself by ever greater inflation of the fiat money supply. The border between Hong Kong and communist China, and even the ocean straits between Taiwan and the mainland, bustle with illegal trade. Western DVDs and jeans were once illegally available in most provinces of China. Now they're manufacturing them there. Saigon, renamed Ho Chi Minh City, remains the black market center of Vietnam. Even more telling, it produces most of the goods and services of all Vietnam. Myanmar, or Burma, rigidly controlled official economy, according to the Manchester Guardian, is nothing but paper, and the entire market has gone black. Under the noses of American forces, Afghani tribes grow, process, and ship heroin by the metric ton. Tax evasion, inflation avoidance, smuggling, free production, and illegal distribution still compose only half the counter-economy. Labor flows as freely as capital, as hordes of quote-unquote illegal aliens pour across borders for more statist to less statist economic regions. Consciousness-altering substances and even unproven medicines such as dichlorosated, look, I'm not, anyways, such as that word and the other word, latril, make up a well-known but small fraction of the counter-economy. Drugs are grown on huge plantations, refined in scores of factories and laboratories, distributed by fleets of boats, planes, trucks, and cars, and sold to customers by regiments of wholesalers and armies of street dealers. The state's imposition of some people's moral codes on others leads to Bible smuggling in atheist states and pornography publishing in conservative religious states. The, quote, world's oldest profession, end quote, as sexual prostitution has been titled, is also, if that title is true, the world's oldest counter-economic industry. Feminists seeking control of their own bodies look to the counter-economy to obtain contraceptives and find midwives to deliver babies their way in the counter-economy. Nobody works at anything anywhere which is not connected with counter-economics. Those looking for a more exhaustive listing of counter-economic activities, with all the sources and references footnoted, are invited to read the author's upcoming book, Counter-Economics. Information. 2 counter-economic industries are singled out for their importance to agorism. Justice is a commodity. Its manner of distribution defines a social system and will be covered in detail in Chapter 7. The other business is information. The internet explosion has led the American state, for now at any rate, to throw up its tentacles at regulation of the information industry. Every legislative session, however, brings new attempts to tax and control the World Wide Web. But consider this well. Should the counter-economy lick the information problem, it would virtually eliminate the risk it incurs under the state's threats. That is, if you can advertise your products, reach your consumer, and accept payment, a form of information, all outside the detection capabilities of the state, what enforcement of control would be left? At the leading edge of web development today is encryption. Advanced researchers have developed methods of locking away data in memory banks that defy any breaking in. That is, the state cannot reach the invoices, inventory lists, accounts, and so on of the counter-economists. An area of human society immune to the power of the state deserves the name, if anything does, of anarchy. The state, though, continues to attempt to penetrate privacy with quantum computing methods of cracking even the most complex cryptographic schemes. Will the counter-economy respond with quantum cryptography? Stay tuned. The race is hardly at an end. This leads us to 2 crucial questions. What happens if the state is abolished and we have a free market? And why has the counter-economy not overwhelmed the existing economy already? These questions bring us back to the land of theory, where libertarianism answers the first question and agorism the second. Before we deal with them, let us consider some applications of counter-economic business practices and social interactions, which will both illustrate our descriptions and possibly be of some profit to you and yours. Chapter 4. Applied Counter-Economics. Counter-economics is application. People have discovered and acted in a counter-economic way without understanding what they are doing, why they are doing it, and even denying that they are doing it at all. Understanding what you are doing usually helps. And applying counter-economics systematically and consistently maximizes both your profit and freedom. As it turns out, the basic formula is no more difficult than simple accounting, arithmetic used in all business. The basic law of counter-economics is to trade risk for profit. Having done so, one naturally acting to remove felt unease, attempts to reduce the risks. If you reduce your risks while others continue to face the higher risks, you naturally outcompete and survive longer, and you profit. What's the risk? It is possible to make a reasonable estimate of the risks you are taking in counter-economic activity, which is better precision than many businesses' ventures offer. The government itself gathers statistics concerning apprehension of quote-unquote criminals and publishes them. The police agencies brag about how few cases are solved and how fast the quote-unquote crime rate is growing to justify ever bigger budgets. Nonetheless, most quote-unquote crimes go completely unreported and undetected. So the state's stats are an upper limit of apprehension. That is, their figures are useful as maximum risk. The highest apprehension rate for the most foul crimes seldom hit 20%, an indication of government effectiveness in maintaining public order. Is it worth it? Suppose you wish to do something counter-economic. To be specific, you can buy something for $10,000 and sell it for $20,000. Your regular overhead is $5,000. Your net return on investment is $5,000. On an investment of $15,000, that's 33%, extremely high. But since there is a risk, how can you tell if the return is worth it? Let's say the government claims it catches 20% of those doing what you want to do. If you are caught, the penalty would be a maximum fine of $50,000 or 6 months in jail. Your quote-unquote downside risk then is 20% of $50,000 or $10,000. In this example, it would not be worth it to gain $5,000 but risk losing $10,000. If the apprehension rate were 10% and the fine $25,000, then your risk would be $2,500 for a gain of $5,000. As is obvious, you could get caught one time in 10, pay off your fines, and still come out way ahead. Of course, all these calculations make certain assumptions about your subjective values. You may fear risk to a pathological state, and any risk is too high or too much. Or you may love frustrating the state and take high risks for lower gain just for the fun of it. Actually, a more realistic risk estimate would include the price of a lawyer to beat your charges and the probability of being convicted after apprehension. Assume that the retainer to your lawyer raises your overhead $1,000 per transaction. Now your payoff is $4,000, but the conviction rate, with plea bargaining and court delays, is only 20%. Again, that is high in many jurisdictions. Many cases are dropped long before they come to trial. Now your risk, using our first figures, is 20% of 20% of $50,000, or $2,000. With a payoff of $4,000, a loss of $2,000 would deter few entrepreneurs. If you would like a simple formula for your own business, try this. Counter-economic payoff equals profit minus loss equals promised price minus cost minus overhead minus penalty of or fine times probability of arrest times probability of conviction. If positive, go. If negative, don't go. Lowering risks. Taking reasonable steps to conceal your activities from accidental discovery, learning to talk only to trusted friends, spotting poor risks or government agents, all reduce your risk and increase your payoff. As you develop techniques to lower your risk, you will increase your counter-economic activities. More of them become profitable. These side effects include the creation of an agorist society. More on that in Chapter 7. Counter-economizing. While it's true that you cannot obey all the inconsistent laws of the state and so be completely, quote unquote, white market, you can live completely counter-economically and be completely black market. In the middle 1970s, the federal state passed a regulation imposing a maximum speed limit on U.S. highways of 55 miles per hour. With the threat of cutting federal funds to states and counties, the entire driving population decelerated to a creeping crawl. Or did it? Consider the following calculation. At 55 miles per hour, a trucker can drive 55 miles in 1 hour, 550 miles in 10 hours, and 2,200 miles in 40 hours. At an average of 70 miles per hour, he makes 700 miles in 10 hours and 2,800 miles in 40 hours. To make it even clearer, assume that the trucker nets $1,000 after cost for each 600-mile run. He makes 4 runs legally for $4,000 in an easy week, or $5,000 by extending his hours or working weekends. At 70 miles per hour, he makes $5,000 for the roughly 40-hour week. With that type of incentive, the race went to the swift, and the quote-unquote double nickel speed limit was scuffled. Scufflawed or whatever. Anyways, but being caught and fined could wipe out that advantage. Suppose fuel were consumed at a rate that cost an extra $200 at the higher speed, and you received an average fine of $200. 4 busts a week, and it's no longer worth it. Along came Citizens Band Radio. Put $200 or $400 once into a CB radio investment, reduce your busts to once a week, and you're back in business. And that, of course, is what happened. Truckers, quote-unquote, spotted for each other, formed convoys, and thwarted the state's, quote-unquote, Smokey Bear highwayman. Consider these side effects. Okay, truckers found solidarity economically, culturally, and anti-politically. A CB culture exploded into the popular culture with C.W. McCall's classic song, Convoy. Non-truckers who were willing to buy a CB and learn the culture, especially the language, what's your 20, were accepted freely into the ordered highway anarchy. More evasion of regulations followed, and the counter-economy grew. Truckers, many of conservative upbringing, became considerably more tolerant and willing to help other quote-unquote lawbreakers when their common enemy, Smokey, threatened. The CB explosion is not meant here to be a model in the sense of waiting around for the state to trigger off mass rebellion in an egregiously stupid law, by an egregiously stupid law. This happened to be a particularly spectacular case, but no more than the sudden jump in counter-economics when prohibition was passed in the 1920s, or when the draft led to 2 years slavery and possible death in 1964. And the state does not learn from its mistakes, as recent efforts to reimpose the 55-mile-per-hour limit as well as reactivate the draft arise again. Now, it's 65 now, but this book was written quite a long time ago. So, counter-economizing yourself. Whatever service you provide to the market, you know best how to counter-economize. You know best which regulations to avoid first for maximum payoff to risk ratio. You know which suppliers can be trusted and which cannot. You know which customers to trust and which not to trust. Division of labor, subjective value, and human individuality all contribute to making your case and everyone else's unique. If you seek or want advice on how best to counter-economize, you need personal counseling, similar to investment counseling. But considering the hundreds of millions of people, many with educational and cultural handicaps, who counter-economize quite successfully, the challenge is not that great. You need mostly the will to do it. And that psychological counter-economics will be important as part of Chapter 8. It's undoubtedly easier to extend your counter-economizing when everyone else is doing it. Most people are, but in small and different ways. Still, if you could win more suppliers and customers over to your trust and get them to counter-economize, they would not only resist turning you in, but they would develop a tendency not to leak secrets and would, therefore, decrease your risk and increase your payoff both ways. The fact is the driving force toward expansion of the counter-economy. The force is what agorism unleashes against the state. Okay. So before we jump into the next chapter, I want to remind you all to take a little trip over to voluntaristacademy.com, please, if you will. And when you get to voluntaristacademy.com, you can Podcast Addict, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, yada, 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 so on and so on. But if you're over there, you can come over here and you can enjoy the episodes here as well. While you're here, sign up to the newsletter. It's the best way to stay in touch. It really is. I don't send them out very often, but you're going to want to be on the mailing list, because if something happens to this channel, guys, dude, like, the mailing list is the only way you're going to be able to know that I'm still in the game and that I haven't quit. I don't really plan on quitting doing this, but there's no telling when, the YouTube algorithm changes, or the terms of service change, and they don't like what I'm saying, because I'm saying things, there's things that are said on this channel that, in the COVID era would have gotten me kicked out the door. So if you're signed up to the newsletter, then if that were to happen, then you can stay in touch and figure it out, or just go over to Rumble or wherever, figure it out, and just know that where there is a platform that I can publish videos, there's going to be videos being published. Okay. Thank you very much. And when you're, looking into the newsletter, you get like to catch up on the news and different news articles and podcasts that I listen to and read throughout the week from I trust the sources, and maybe you'll find value in them too. Places like Corbett Report, Grand Theft World, which, by the way, I was a guest co-host on Grand Theft World for the last couple weeks. Thank you, Richard Grove, for that invite. What a honor to be on there. That was a lot of fun. And I hope to do it again soon, because, I like talking about current events, but here on this channel, we're trying to get down to a little bit of the philosophy and to try to kind of help the internal monarchy be strong, so that way we can live in external anarchy. But I really appreciate being on that show. That was awesome. And so when you get the newsletter, you can check out what I'm doing throughout the week, and who knows, all sorts of different stuff in the newsletter that I used to send out to people. But get on the mailing list. It's it's cool. You can become a sponsor for like $3 a month, and you get an invite into the Discord channel where we can talk more directly and have more stimulating conversations back and forth, and even get on like video calls and stuff like that, and actually we can actually have conversations. Because I like the chat on the live streams and the comments and everything. Leave comments on the videos and do all that liking and subscribing and doing all that stuff is all a big help. But if you become a sponsor, you help support the channel by various tech issues that come up. Everything costs money, and for $3 a month, it's like the price of a cup of coffee, or less these days. But for $3 a month, you can be in the Discord and hang out, and we'll figure out more in the future, but that's what my offer is right now. So get in on that. That's a lot of fun. I don't know what's going on with the rest of my webpage here, but if you go to the resources page at voluntaristacademy.com, you'll be able to download PDFs and take them home with you. You can find them on, different, like archive.org and everything like that. But if you're here at voluntaristacademy.com, you can just download for yourself all the stuff that I try to read on the channel and everything like that. But it's not loading right now for some reason. That's weird. Anyways, let's get back to the reading. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook as well. And you can, man, that's weird. Anyways, let's get back to the reading. Like, subscribe, do all that crazy stuff, and help get this information out to more people. By doing that, you train the algorithm to thinking that my content is worth viewing, and that's the best way to help the channel. Really, is this information needs to reach more people. Many people are communicating this information out there. I want to help make that voice louder, and you can help me do that by doing all those crazy little steps. So I appreciate your help. Anyways, I'm sure I'm going to check in on the chat at the end here. I don't have it pulled up in front of me because honestly, I find it a little distracting, but you can ask your questions and everything in the comments and in the chat, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. All right, we good? We're going to get through the next couple chapters here, and we're going to figure out, we're going to figure out some stuff about what Sam Konkin has to say about libertarianism. So let's get back to the reading. And thank you guys for being here. I see there's some people watching. Thank you for watching. I hope that we're learning some stuff together and that you're finding value in this. So I appreciate you guys being here. And there will be, like I did with End of All Evil, there'll be a supercut of this as well eventually, where it's just the reading and none of the advertising or whatever. This show is not sponsored by anybody. It's completely, it's completely sponsored by the listeners, and we don't read ads here. But yeah. Anyways, let's continue. Chapter 5. Libertarianism. The basic premise of agorist thinking is that counter-economics has failed to free society because counter-economics lacks a moral structure that only a full-blown philosophical system can provide. In this chapter, we deal with the other half of this problem, an ideology unconnected to reality, where counter-economics is application without theory, libertarianism is theory without application. Many gods, one morality. Libertarianism differs from all other philosophies by its pluralism. It does not to ask how you came to the fundamental moral premise, religious revelation, atheistic observation, natural law theory, or many others. Christians, Taoists, objectivists, and pagans travel different routes to arrive at one moral code in common. Initiation of coercion or the threat of violence is immoral. This is the libertarian principle. Two things follow from the phrasing. 1. There are no exceptions, hence libertarianism affects all human action by this formulation. And 2, it is phrased negatively, so that anything else is permissible human behavior, though each adherent may find other acts immoral or objectionable. Christianity yields a yes-no answer to every aspect of human activity. So too Marxism, Islam, objectivism, and many, many other understandings of the world's nature. In these systems, anything not prohibited is mandatory. You must or you must not. Libertarianism answers only that you may or you may not, leaving choice to you. Any religion or ideology that swears not to coerce others to act in accordance with its precepts is compatible with libertarianism. All religions and ideologies that use force for anything save self-defense in the narrow, immediate sense, excluding quote-unquote preventative aggression and other such rationalizations, are enemies of libertarianism. Libertarian society. Libertarianism's very pluralism prevents one from ascribing any unanimous characteristic to libertarians. They all want liberty, but for different reasons, and see different ways of achieving it. Some would take control of the state and, quote-unquote, force people to be free. Others would not even resort to violence to defend themselves. Giving all those groups their due for enriching libertarian thought and life with greater variety than any other ideology, the rigorous application of consistency, to which agorists and this book adhere, does settle some issues. A free society is one in which man is constrained only by unthinking nature. His fellow men leave him alone. One can personally live up to this, and one can admit only those who uphold it, expelling all those who don't. But one cannot prevent anyone from instituting aggression. One can only deal with it after the fact. Statists advocate creating a bigger criminal, a great monster institution which will terrify nearly everyone, innocent or guilty, into submission. This organization will extract some form of acceptance from its quote-unquote citizens and yet plunder them at will. That's known as taxation. It will control their behavior and even their thinking, though some statists seek to place some restraints upon this super criminal organization. Some of those who advocate the strongest restraints, as they perceive them, call themselves limited government libertarians. Since they seek a small state or mini-archy, they are minarchists. Consistent libertarians see no place for criminals, even to fight other criminals. They believe free market, all voluntary, methods will take care of the few criminals, finding them, through investigation, arresting them with delegated protection, trying them, which is arbitration, and restoring lost value to the victim from the aggressors, which is restitution. The means of accomplishing this vary from communal power to highly technological, competitive business agencies and others in between, such as neighborhood block associations. Such no-government libertarians are called anarchists. The peaceful libertarians who refuse even to defend themselves have to be classified with anarchists. It is bitterly ironic that heavy state propaganda has convinced many people that anarchists throw bombs, since most anti-war movements, draft resistance, disarmament, and tax resistance groups were organized by anarchists of one sort or another. Perhaps 0.01% of those calling themselves anarchists throughout history have used a bomb. 100% of all states' bombs, shell, and machine gun regularly as a matter of course. A libertarian society is one which approximates a free society save for a small percentage of criminal aggression, which is handled by voluntary mechanisms. A society in which aggression gets, quote-unquote, out of hand is one with a de facto, if not de jure, state or government. A statist society. Libertarianism and the free market. A few libertarians advocate communal or neighborhood social organization with collectively held, quote-unquote, property voluntarily surrendered. Most libertarians have adopted the free market and the economic understanding of it developed in Chapter 1. So whenever a conflict between the economics of government intervention or confiscation, statism for short, and free enterprise emerges in public debate, Libertarians rush to the forefront of defense of the individual or non-state group. Libertarianism often confuses statists of the left wing and the right wing by opposing both. Libertarians see war as total socialism, quote-unquote socialism, and march with many leftists against it. Yet, opposition to welfare statism allies libertarianism with some rightists. But statists of the left and right are easily distinguishable from libertarians in any coalition. Threaten the state's existence and observe their reaction. Conservatives will give up free enterprise rather than see government abolished. Liberals will go to war rather than see government abolished. Libertarians will abolish the state and end both socialism and war. Libertarianism and the counter-economy. Libertarian dissidents, from Polish professors to American students, make up an intellectual field of counter-economics. A Yugoslavian theorist raised in the Marxist tradition called for removing politics from socialism and embracing a market economy. It would appear that there is a natural affinity between the philosophers of freedom and the practitioners of counter-economics. Indeed, a few libertarians would deny the moral correctness of the latter. Yeah, a few would deny that. An early slogan some radical libertarians put on a button was, quote-unquote, defend the black market. Libertarianism in the United States traces its history from the abolitionist movement to free the slaves, which is an act of human counter-economics. And yet, while many abolitionists created and maintained an underground railway to assist slaves who freed themselves counter-economically, others called for upholding the law, working within the system and engaging in politics to take over the government and pass laws to free the slaves. The same division between activists and reformers afflicts modern libertarians and many other ideological movements, to be sure. George Orwell, who came to a type of libertarianism from activism in the socialist movement of the 1930s, castigated some of his fellow socialists for refusing to dirty their hands and actually fighting for their beliefs on the battlefields of Spain. This perceptive author of 1984 and Animal Farm noted these hypocritical dilettantes' proclivity for hanging around English drawing rooms and waxing eloquent for the socialist cause while contributing precious little else. He called them parlor pinks. Libertarianism is afflicted with more than its share of library libs today. Some, though, are horribly paralyzed by the question, how do we achieve a free society? This combination of strategic paralysis, moral lassitude, honest confusion due to the rich variety of libertarian pluralism, and not a little, quote-unquote, selling out, has weakened libertarianism to the point where what is presently called the libertarian movement may no longer be trusted to defend the counter-economy and achieve a libertarian society. The next chapter shows why. Chapter 6. Applied Libertarianism. A brief history of liberty. The history of the libertarian movement can be divided into 4 historical periods. The first covered most of our history, when many men and women derived the ideas of freedom and defended freedom as they understood it, with little comprehension of the mechanics of human action. Some of these, such as the Quakers of Pennsylvania, settled colonies away from predatory statism and developed peace and trade with the natives. The American Revolution erupted the year that Adam Smith published the first basic work on economics. Still, the confused American revolutionaries allowed the Federalist statists to restore a strong central government by a bit of trickery called the Constitution, a piece of paper which supposedly guaranteed to restrain the new state. Most of the revolutionaries, nearly all the signers of the Declaration of Independence, for instance, opposed the Constitution. Many Americans were taken in by the statist selling job and laid down their arms that were defending them, practically in exchange for the paper guarantee. As soon as the new government was elected, it sent the military to Pennsylvania to crush the tax rebels who opposed the new tax on whiskey distillation. In England, soon after, a man named William Godwin took the political ideas of the American revolutionaries to their logical conclusion and became the first anarchist. In the 1830s, European intellectual scene, a man named Max Steiner combined anarchy with defense of the free market, as far as Adam Smith understood it then, and created a philosophy of egoism or total individualism. For a time, he contested with Marx and Engels for the loyalty of the young Hegelians in the German clubs. They wrote a 2-volume defense of their theory against Steiner, which is called The German Ideology. I can never tell if I'm saying that right. I'll just brief aside here. Sterner? Is it Steiner? Sterner? I don't know. I think it's Sterner. Steiner. I say Steiner. Steiner. In the United States, Josiah Warren continued the anarchist tradition in Massachusetts. One of his abolitionist followers, Lysander Spooner, finally developed the killing argument against the U.S. state in his remarkable natural law treatise, No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority, which I've read on this channel. And anyways, alas, it was nearly a century late because the state was entrenched well enough to fight a civil war to destroy the remaining internal restraints on its power, naturally under the pretext of expanding freedom by abolishing slavery. Spooner saw through the smokescreen and supported both abolition and secession of the southern states. His follower, Benjamin Tucker, discovered Steiner's European individualism and combined the two traditions. The heyday of individualist anarchism during the publication of Tucker's Liberty magazine from 1881 to 1908 could be called the second stage of libertarianism. George Bernard Shaw, for example, broke into the American literacy scene through Liberty. The full title of Tucker's journal was Liberty, the Mother, not the Daughter, of Order. I'm sorry. Isn't George, just a quick aside, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't George Bernard Shaw, isn't he a Fabian socialist, or am I mixing up the name there? To continue, Tucker still had problems with economics, not understanding subjective value or the validity of rent, interest, and profit. While willing to accept anything arrived at freely, he and his associates spent their energies on side issues and invalid controversies. When World War I broke out, they lost the center stage of history to the socialists for half a century. At the same time that Tucker himself was giving up, brilliant Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises wrote his doctoral thesis in 1910 called The Theory of Money and Credit, which explained interest, inflation, and business cycles. His analysis led to an easy explanation and prediction of the Great Depression. But it went unheeded. In 1949, Mises published his magnum opus called Human Action. Along the way, he sent the communist economists into a panic by proving that economic calculation was impossible once socialist statists destroyed the free market pricing system. During the 1920s and 1930s, proto-libertarians such as H.L. Mencken and Albert J. Nock kept the philosophy alive, but in despair. One of Nock's students, Frank Chodorov, reached one of Mises's students, Murray Rothbard. In 1950, Rothbard connected with the American anarchist tradition, and the modern libertarian stage began. Another of Nock's students, Suzanne La Follette, inspired many modern libertarian feminists. More women, like Rose Wilder Lane and Isabel Patterson, kept libertarianism alive in the 1940s. For 20 years, Rothbard tirelessly sold his consistent libertarian view in intellectual circles and was purged from the right, from objectivists, from the left, and various other groups, always taking a few more with him, never despairing. In 1969, during the heat of the student revolt against the Vietnam War and the draft, both the leftist Students for a Democratic Society and the rightist Young Americans for Freedom split internally. The anarchists from SDS joined the Free Marketeers from YAF at a convention called by Dr. Rothbard, and thousands of young activists were unleashed onto the campuses to fight for pure freedom. Within a few years, there were 1 million libertarians in North America and small groups from England to Spain to Australia. Libertarians graduated and started businesses or entered for the higher levels of academy, bringing reinforcements to Dr. Rothbard and his previously small core. Libertarian reporters, authors, and even newscasters spread through the media. Robert Lefebvre, another libertarian educator contemporary with Rothbard, graduated hundreds of businessmen from his seminars and thousands from Rampart College. Leonard Read and his crew reached many from all walks of life at the foundation of economic education. New foundations and institutes sprang up. Early in 1971, a group of Californians started a Libertarian Party as a front for distribution of literature and appeal for equal time on local media. In December of 1971, David F. Nolan convened a founding convention of a Libertarian Party in deadly earnest. Rothbard scoffed at the idea of a party as wildly premature. In 1972, an LP presidential candidate got few votes, but thanks to a renegade Republican elector from Virginia, John Hospers, professor of philosophy at the University of Southern California, received 1 electoral vote. His running mate, Tony Nathan of Oregon, became the first woman to receive one. The elector, Roger McBride, became the LP nominee for president in 1976. The LP emerged from 2 sources: impatience and inconsistency. In 1972, the student movement collapsed, but the graduates needed years to affect society by working their way through the system and building alternatives outside it. This desire to achieve results now, get rich quick, was expressed in the return of many who had rejected the statist system to re-enter it. Though most of those entering the LP were not the politically cynical old-timers. The more raw recruits to libertarianism had little direct experience with politics and so accepted arguments that the party would spread the word to people used to receiving it via the receiving it via the biennial electoral process. While half the LP recruiters swore that the LP was an educational tool and would never win an election and take power, the other half promised the replacement of the Republicans by the new party and the transformation of society from the top down. During 1973, the party threat became serious and the Libertarian movement began to split. The anti-party Libertarians called themselves various names such as New Libertarians, left, more consistently radical Libertarians, radical Libertarians, and exotic names such as Voluntarists. The common goal of these activists was to deflect the party anti-principle in the minds and hearts of most libertarians and pursue the original goals of liberty in libertarian, that is, anti-political ways. The party arcs, as those who professed being ruled by a party, yet called themselves anarchists, were then called. And their minarchist allies were small in number, but did have an advantage in getting newspaper and television coverage. Radical libertarian campaigns such as the 1976 Vote for Nobody counter-campaign received publicity on several hundred radio stations, and 50% of registered American voters failed to cast ballots. More and more quote-unquote pure libertarians gave up on the label as the word was increasingly identified with a group out to take political power, as opposed to abolishing it. The New Libertarians found that many who would agree to live freely and trade without aggression were repelled by the Libertarian name. Finally, in 1983, the movement of the Libertarian Left, the New Libertarian Alliance, and others moved to drop the Libertarian label entirely. Some chose the name Voluntaryism. Those wishing to promote the completely consistent ideology described in this book chose the name Agorist. During the 1973 struggle, the challenges for an alternative strategy to politics were answered by the NLA founder, who discovered and coined the term counter-economics. See Chapter 3. In 1980, the NLA published New Libertarian Manifesto, which explained agorism and beyond to libertarian activists. The libertarian failure. Libertarians were and still are a pluralistic group. Different interpretations of liberty and how to achieve it were cheerfully tolerated for the most part. The appearance of a quote-unquote party line was anathema to this spirit of living variety. The burning issue shifted from asking which new libertarian theory works and which does not, to asking which libertarian candidate can get elected. To many, libertarianism was a fine theory which had no obvious practice. There are many paths to freedom, true, and each individual should choose the one he or she thought most workable. One that was chosen swallowed up the others. How it did was simple. It tied into the state's grant of monopoly to ideologies that form a centralized political party, and then spokespersons of that ideology are automatically represented as servitors or functionaries of that party, even when they vigorously deny any connection by the statist media. And then again, maybe not. Quote-unquote libertarian may have come to mean LP member, but agorists, voluntarist, left libertarians, and such still outnumber the few thousand LP members and even the never-since-matched million votes their candidate, Edward Clark, received in 1980 in the 1980 U.S. presidential race. Whether or not libertarianism failed and died, perverted, so near so near to 1984, Orwell's deadline for tyranny's triumph in the form of an all-powerful party, or was simply a stage in the evolution of agorism, building a theory to explain and morally defend counter-economics, is a moot point. Both positions are, in a sense, true. Agorism is here and viable for those who wish to live as freely as possible now and increase their freedom in the future. What now calls itself, quote-unquote, libertarian, cannot honestly offer that anymore. Those who understand this will reject the Libertarian Party and other political solutions to the statist problem. Those who accept the LP will waste their time, energy, and wealth in building a new means of keeping people in bondage under the thumb of the state. The libertarian insight and fallacy. Libertarian theory provided the crucial insight as to why counter-economics was morally correct as well as, obviously, practical and very profitable. The crucial issue was that of the state, its nature, and its evolution. The easiest paradigm, short model, for the origin of the state was offered by Franz Oppenheimer, a German sociologist, and adapted into American libertarianism in Albert J. Nock's 1935 book, Our Enemy, the State. All historical examples fit this simple paradigm. And here it is. When most of humanity settled into peaceful farming communities with perhaps larger marketplaces, remember, the original agora of Greece, in towns, some people discovered a means of surviving parasitically from the productivity of others. They formed robber bands and attacked towns and settlements, plundering, raping, and murdering. Probably the original barbarian hordes were hunters who took to hunting man when their game died out rather than taking to farming, trading, or productive manufacture. These roving groups were a small minority, or their victims would have died out and they as well, but large as compared to a single town or village. Somewhere along the way, one of them discovered that they could allow the peasants to live with enough to survive on and come back at the next harvest for another raid. A Bug's Life, anybody? Then these raiders had another idea. They would stay in the small towns, steal lightly but regularly, murder enough to keep the peasants and merchants in line, and live well. Other areas, seeing these petty kingdoms arise, decided to submit themselves to their own homegrown warlords so that they would not fall prey to the foreign warriors. The book of Samuel in the Old Testament describes the anarchist prophet Samuel trying to convince the Israelites that they didn't really want a king, but finally giving in to them. Parasites must remain a minority or kill their hosts, so they discovered religion and later ideology as a means to intimidate peasants and win the all-important sanction of the victim, an apt phrase of Ayn Rand's. Brutal thugs became kings by divine right, and some very powerful statists called emperors, pharaohs, or tsars were said to be divine, the unstoppable choice of gods. And so these barbarian raiders institutionalized plunder, they called it taxation, murder, they called it execution and warfare, and even rape. They called it droit de seigneur, for example. That's my best French. Anyways, they took control of roads to plunder the caravans. They called those tolls and tariffs. They suppressed all rival criminal gangs with their own. They call that police. And established their own churches, schools, judges, and even philosophers, minstrels, and artists to work in their royal courts. Thus was born the state. As people come to understand this situation, and especially important questions of conscience, split religions, and ideologies, dissidents grew. The state learned to survive by adapting. It used its court thinkers, they call those intellectuals, to come up with new ways of mystifying the people. The kings, quote-unquote, limited themselves and shared their plunder with aristocrats and certain favored merchants. Thus was born mercantilism, which Adam Smith challenged. Then even peasants and workers were permitted to plunder their fellow merchants, farmers, and workers. This was called democracy. Groups were allowed to organize to fight over who should steal from whom, though an elite of bureaucrats and very rich businessmen continue no matter who is elected, and thus were formed political parties. The Libertarian analysis superbly explained the political history of the world and, combined with free market economics, analyzed depressions, modern warfare, and revolutions, describing their causes and predicting the futility of political solutions. When libertarianism began to organize itself, though, much of the movement was bought off with yet another political party. To understand the libertarian fallacy, consider its insight in other terms. Oppenheimer and Knock pointed out that there were only two ways to acquire wealth. They equated wealth to food, shelter, tools, entertainment. One could produce some and trade for others, or one could steal those produced. Those are all the choices there are. They named the productive way the economic means, and the parasitic way the political means. Murray Rothbard, following Ludwig von Mises's Human Action, with his own economic treatise, Man, Economy, and State, added that insight onto Austrian economics in the final chapters. The demand for elucidation was so great that he wrote in detail an entire book on the subject, Power and Market. It is amazing that, for a time, even Dr. Rothbard forgot his own lesson. The choice was power/politics versus market/economics. Using political means to achieve free market ends is self-destructive and self-defeating. The recognition of the libertarian incompatibility of statist means to anti-statist ends was the first Agorist insight. Following that, the new Agorists looked for the proper means to achieve a free society, or at least a fully libertarian society. They sought market means only. The author of this book and his companions found the counter-economy staring them in the face as soon as they thought of looking. All right, so next week we'll finish the book, and we'll do all that. That'll be fun. Okay, thank you. So hold on, don't go anywhere, because I'll pull up the chat. We'll see what's going on in the chat, if anything. Nope, nothing. All right, well, that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. And yeah, so tell me what you think in the comments below and do all that crazy stuff. And come back next week for the epic conclusion of An Agorist Primer by Samuel Edward Konkin III. So following An Agorist Primer, when we're done with this series, following this series, I'm going to, not this, we're not doing this. We're going to, I'm thinking about doing the most dangerous superstition. So tell me what you think about that. Drop a comment in the, on the video or whatever. If you made it this far in the video, tell me what you think about that. We can do the most dangerous superstition. And write into the show. Come right into the show. Go to voluntaryistacademy.com and write in to the show on the contact page, and maybe suggest some. I mean, we're not going to get into like a book that's 1,000 pages. Like, don't be ridiculous about this. So, but if there's like a series that you'd like to see produced, write in. Maybe we'll do it in the future. if you go to voluntaristacademy.com/contact, you can you can write in and tell me what's on your mind. And yeah, so you can do that. All right. Sweet deal, everybody. I'll give one last look at the chat, see if there's anything. Let's see. Okay. Cool. All right. All right. Well, that's it, everyone. That's it. We're going to call it a night. So just remember, before you leave, that you own yourself, period. No one else owns you. You're not a slave. And these political parasites need to be told no. So do that peacefully and have fun out there. Oh, is the chat picking up as soon as I'm about to leave? Yeah. Reading the material gives people time to think. Yeah. I'm thinking that I don't know. Catch the replay. Oh, what's up, Ed? Yeah, man. Catch the replay. It's just going to go up right away. Oh, Evolutionary Capitalist is back. Welcome back, man. Welcome back. So just as a pleasant reminder for everybody that likes to throw, some comments in the chat and everything like that, dude, I appreciate it so much. Like the correspondence back and forth with the audience during the live streams and everything. I mean, I'm reading material, so I don't pull up the chat until the end now. I'm not going to keep the chat up. It's seeing the messages over here on this monitor over here is distracting. So like, I'm just going to shut the chat dock down until after, and then I'll open it up and I'll see what you guys are saying. But so given that kind of, that kind of thing, do me a favor. Okay. And maybe we can work this process out somehow, some way. But do me a favor. If you have something to say, I want to see it. I want to hear it. I want to interact. It's extremely stimulating to me to interact with the people that are watching this stuff, and I enjoy it very much. It's not so much like attention seeking, but I just like to see what people are saying. It's fun to have the conversation. Anyone that really knows me personally will tell you I love having conversations with people. It's something that I really like doing. So just do me a favor. Help me do that by, when you make a comment in the live chat, make it so I can read it. Make it comprehensible. Is that a word? Comprehensible? I think a guy that reads a lot would know that. Anyways, yeah, let's have the conversation. But I don't know. Didn't Ross Ulbricht and Roger Ver try agorism? I don't know. I met Ross Ulbricht once. I got to shake his hand and talk to him very, very briefly. But I don't know if he actually tried agorism or what he did. Could be actually what he did was set up a website where people, yeah, he tried agorism. That's for sure. Larkin Rose also tried agorism. I don't understand that, but maybe we can ask Larkin. Give me more than just give me more than that. Evolutionary Capitalist, I appreciate you, but give me more than Larkin Rose also tried agorism. How did he try agorism? I'm aware of Ross Ulbricht setting up his website back in the day and getting into a lot of trouble. Roger Ver, I've heard about him. I'm not on that side of any sort of political activism or anything like that by trying to keep up with other people's lives and what they're doing. I'm trying to do my own thing. But I'd like to learn. If you can help me learn, that'd be great. Let me know what Larkin did that is agorism, because all he did was try to get people to stop paying federal income tax. I don't think that's agorism, but he sells books. So I guess that's sort of bringing something to the economy. I don't know. Didn't work out. No, it doesn't work out when you stop paying these thugs, their money, and they catch you, they're going to put you in a cage. That's the whole thing. And more people need to understand that taxation is not just theft, it's slavery. When one group of people over there, albeit a very small group of people, have perceived authority, when they have brainwashed a very large group of people to believe in their authority, right? Because it's the belief. And that's why I want to get into the most dangerous superstition, because I think it would be appropriate for the audience out there to have that. I know it already exists on audiobook, but maybe there's something I can do a little bit, special to the audience on this channel. But when you have a group of people, Group A gets to decide how much of Group B, the Group B makes their own earnings, they make their own living, they acquire property, and Group A gets to decide how much of Group B's property Group B gets to keep. Or else they're going to put Group B in a cage. That's slavery. So that's not, and Group B should say no, but enough people are afraid, and through fear, you can do some pretty wonderful things. And I mean that in the most just silliest of ways. I mean, through fear, you can do some pretty crazy things. Taxation is not like HOA fees. It's not. Anyways, dude, thank you. All right, so I'm going to get out of here, guys, and thank you very much. If you want to continue this conversation, become a sponsor of the show, and we can have better conversations in the Discord channel. $3 a month. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. $3 a month, man. Maybe, that's, it's sad that that's less than a gallon of gas right now. Jesus Christ. But that's a month. Wow. A whole month where you get to hang out with me in the private chat, and we can have video calls and everything. And we can get to know one another and have a better conversation than on a live chat where there is a delay, where like in 5 seconds, you're going to see what I'm saying right now. And I'm having trouble keeping up with the chat, but I appreciate everybody. Appreciate you all. And tune in next week, same time, same place. Remember on your way out that you own yourself, and taxation is slavery. It's slavery. And hey, as the world gets a little rougher to exist in and everything like that, remember, don't panic. We got to stay calm. We got to stay cool and collected out there. And we got to win the battle of ideas. So, let's stay on this side. We got to stay on this side of the bars, of like a big old fence with barbed wire on the top of it. We got to stay out of their cages and everything like that, because if you understand what it takes to make freedom happen, we have to be on this side of it to actually affect any sort of change in the world that's going to help future generations be more free. Okay? So instead of spreading fear and doing things that would get you locked up, let's just have a little bit of respect and love, and try to communicate these ideas out to people as best we can. I love you all. Thank you very much. Peace.
No masters, no slaves, no